Economics students are not famous for their cooperative behavior. And if you're an Econ instructor, chances are you yourself were an Econ student. I was a student when this paper was written. I remember the term. I was taking intermediate microeconomics with Juan Carlos Belaustegui-Goitia, and he applied the infamous experiment of public goods to us. I remember feeling so proud of myself because I was so smart. I kept all the benefits from my individual account and all the benefits from the public good provided by those students who naively decided to cooperate. I had a few more weeks and I needed their help to study for the finals. I had a few more months and I needed their help and the help from professors and staff to help me write a thesis. I had a few more years and I was facing the worst deforestation spree in Mexico, and we needed the cooperation of community leaders, NGOs, and lots of people from the federal and local government to help us. Now, going back to teaching, cooperation is good for learning. That's what the literature in pedagogy says. Even the literature in economics says so. In this talk, I share the challenge I faced in the implementation of a cooperative learning technique in a managerial economics course. So in regards to cooperation, there are 3 challenges to consider. The free riding or uneven contribution of the different participants, which can result in an unfair distribution of the load. The student absences or the possibility that some student quits or ghosts the other members of the teams, and the problem is that they don't get to fully participate and learn from the experience. 3, the mindset that Econ students are only focused on their individual gain, which may lead to a lack of participation or to a strategic behavior where you rely on the strongest student to do all the work. To address these challenges, I use the following strategies for incorporating cooperative learning through jigsaw puzzles in the economics classroom. So first, groups were formed trying to ensure a balanced distribution of skills and abilities. This can reduce the likelihood of uneven contributions and ensure that each student has a role to play in the group. We worked with business case studies created by Sage and a couple by the New York Times. So each student was assigned an area of expertise. There will be a pricing expert, a vertical integration expert, a joint production expert, and a net present value expert. In terms of the timing, let me show you my schedule. I begin the group project after the midterm. By then, I already have grades, and I also know my students a bit better. So think about an athletic team. The weakest students are in the middle, the strongest student finishes, and the medium student begins. This way, I have a high probability of having at least a pricing strategy and a net present value analysis of such strategy. In my online course, students meet asynchronously in a discussion board. Now, for in-person projects, some experts suggest to make groups based on academic skills and also based on the time of the week when they can meet. So parents who need to wait for their kids to go to bed can meet in the evenings, while people who work full-time can work in Saturdays and so on. This way, the problem of meeting is solved, right? Well, 2, clear expectations were communicated to students regarding their individual and their group responsibilities. This can help motivate students to contribute equally and hold each other accountable. To make sure that everyone knows what each person should do, I use redundancy a lot. Each team has a page with the whole case study and the instructions. In person, you can use a handout with the role and expectations of each team member. And then the week that we study pricing, I send a reminder of what everybody needs to do. And there are several places where they can find what they need to do. The original setting of the jigsaw puzzle is that students meet with their experts, 16 pricing experts meet, then 16 vertical integration experts meet, and then they divide and they create with their own team their case study. Well, it didn't work in my case because we have very few interactions, so students started developing a relationship in these teams. And then it was very hard to cut the relationship and start a new relationship with the team that they were supposed to turn in their final case study. So what I did is that I put the same team from the beginning, and everybody works in the pricing strategy, everybody works in the vertical integration strategy, and then everybody works in the production strategy, and finally everybody contributes to the net present value calculation. Well, this way they develop a relationship, they set their own pace, and they get used to interacting with one another. Now, to be absolutely transparent about grades, I have a grading rubric to assess both the individual and the group contribution, and they can provide students with a clear understanding of how their work will be evaluated and give them incentives to do what they have to do. Finally, assume good intentions and let them know you care. First of all, even if I don't have the time to grade, I go into each of these 16 discussion boards and make sure that people are showing up. If people are not there, then I tell students that I noticed, and they are not talking to the void. These are some weekly messages that I shared in the weeks when students were working in groups. But I also remind them about assuming good intentions. Missing students have a lot of other things going on in their life right now. There was never a student who didn't participate just because they didn't want to. One student had an accident, and a student had to travel abroad for a funeral. A student had a dad who had a stroke, and so on and so forth. And students are incredibly forgiving. They always embrace that student who wants to come back, and they don't mind helping out. So what happened? In the end, in my book, it was a success. And what does success look like? Well, I had 64 students, and I had 16 case studies uploaded. Out of those 16 teams, 7 of them kept their 4 members and participated together. 7 of them had only 3 members, and 2 of them had only 2 members. I lost 11 of 64 students, and that's a success. This is an asynchronous online course. Now, success also means that you observe the learning happening there in front of your eyes. Success means that you have a tangible result that wouldn't have happened if it was only an individual assignment. Success means that economic students talk to each other and made compromises and work together to build consensus and share the responsibility of the work. So, which other settings do you think you could find to make students work in groups and collaborate and cooperate and practice solving problems as they will do in the real world?